Saved by the Bell is back, and I'm so excited. Get it? It's that reference that everyone's doing with the Jesse and the caffeine pills thing. You have to do it. It's required. I am excited, though. Hey everybody, I'm Dan Murrell, and this is my review of the reboot, the 2020 version of Saved by the Bell. One of the hardest things for people of my generation to explain to people of any other generation, older or younger. If you never saw the original Saved by the Bell, it is a completely disposable teen sitcom that ran on NBC in its first run. But where most people, including myself, first saw it is in the years and years of reruns after the original airings. I had a regimen for years when I would come home from school. I'd get home, it was on for an hour on Fox 16, the local Fox affiliate. Then you get 2 straight hours over on TBS. Then you jump over to WGN and get an hour. I could fill my entire afternoon with Saved by the Bell. I know almost every episode by heart. Keep in mind, Saved by the Bell's not very good. It was never very good. We just have an attachment. Those of us who grew up with it have an attachment to it. So any expectation that I might have put on the show to measure up to what it was when I was growing up, I can't really put there because there's honestly not much to measure up to. It's just one of those things that people of a certain age really, really enjoy. This isn't a complete reboot, though, because we do have some returning characters from the original show, and the very first person that we see again is Zack Morris, the lead of the original Saved by the Bell, played by Mark Paul Gosselaar, now the governor of California, and the setup for this is brilliant. Zack Morris became governor of California to get out of paying a parking ticket, which is a very Zack Morris thing to do, and in order to pay for the tax cuts that he's passed and the subsidies for fossil fuels, he has defunded a large part of California's educational system, which causes the closures of a lot of public schools. One of those schools is Douglas High, and Zack's brilliant plan is to send the students from Douglas to school districts that have much higher funding. In this case, Bayside High. Coming from Douglas to Bayside are the first half of the new class that we're meeting here at Saved by the Bell. Haskiri Velasquez plays Daisy, who is an overachiever, which makes her a particular target for the school's guidance counselor, Jesse Spano, played by a returning Elizabeth Berkley Lauren. We also have Alicia Pascual-Pena as Aisha, whose interest in sports and particularly wanting to play on the football team ruffles a lot of feathers at Bayside, particularly the school's head football coach, A.C. Slater, played by Mario Lopez. Dexter Darden also stars as Devontae Young, who doesn't really want to have much to do with Bayside High or any of the new people that he's meeting there, but is intrigued by the fact that he now is in a school that can have a musical theater program and decides to pursue his passion of music and art. The kids from Douglas clash with the popular kids already at Bayside, led by Zack Morris's son, Mac Morris, who's played by Mitchell Hoog, who somehow manages to be a worse version of his dad. There's also Jesse Spano's dim-witted quarterback son, Jamie Spano, who is as dull as his mother was bright, played by Belmont Camelli. And there's Lexi, the mean girl of the school, played by Josie Tota, whose journey as a trans teen has of course been documented by her own reality TV crew. Rounding out the core cast is John Michael Higgins as Principal Todman, and I have to say, John Michael Higgins made me laugh in every single episode. He's pathetic, but not too pathetic, and then John Michael Higgins, who is a great comedian and has been in so many great Christopher Guest films and other comedies, really brings that energy and spontaneity to the role. Of all the characters, I want to say he probably made me laugh the most consistently. One thing the show exploits by bringing in these kids from Douglas High is to highlight just how out of touch the kids at Bayside are. And it's not just out of touch. This school is almost in its own pocket universe, a universe where the rules of society don't even apply. And that's what they really do to highlight the absurdities of the original show. It's a very meta take, and it shows how the mostly rich, mostly white elite kids of Bayside High clash with the not rich, mostly not white students of Douglas High, and how they are, for the first time in their lives, exposed to a world where privilege is not a right and privilege is not given. There's a lot of humor in this setup, particularly as we see just how absurdly not in the real world anyone at Bayside is. But I began to worry after a few episodes that this was really going to be the only trick that the show had in its bag, that it was is going to continue to spend all of its time kind of riffing on this divide, this class divide, on the microaggressions that the Douglas High kids have to endure from both the students and the parents at Bayside High, whether those are intentional microaggressions or not, and also the unjust educational system that put them in this position to begin with, that caused the school closure. This is not exactly the bubblegum entertainment of the original Saved by the Bell. These kinds of issues are in almost every episode. They take the forefront in the first few. And while I think that these are important things to talk about, if that had continued to the rest of the series, or at least the first season, I think it might have started to feel a little too much. Luckily for the show, in the second half, it's much more character-based, and that's where I think it really thrives and really comes alive. We get into Daisy's hopes and dreams, her struggles with being an overachiever. We get into a relationship between Aisha and Jamie and how that affects Lexi, who's been friends with Jamie for her entire life. One of the things that was always so weird about Saved by the Bell, the original, was that you would have these romances between characters, and then by the next episode, it was all forgotten, and you pretty much just hit the complete reset button. Here, they're able to do a lot more character growth over a series of episodes. And so by that measure, I would say this show is an improvement on the older show in that you actually feel like you get to know who these characters are beyond the broad archetype. The second half also shows the realization on Mac's part that his father, Zack, is indeed trash. And this whole Zack Morris's trash thing is something that has been so popular. They brought in some of the creative talent behind Zack Morris's trash to work on this show. And really, when you look at the creative team behind this version of Saved by the Bell, it's a very young and diverse writing team. It's a very young and diverse directing team. And I think you see that energy, you see that enthusiasm, because it's a mixture, I think, of probably people that know that legacy, probably a few that also grew up with it. And so this is a very meta commentary on the whole Saved by the Bell thing. It addresses the criticisms of the first show. It's able to be a comedy in its own right. It juggles a lot of things. And as I mentioned, with the exception of perhaps pushing the pedal to the metal a little bit too hard on the todayness of it all, I think it largely succeeds with what it's going for. The season ends with a story arc that's been set up pretty well through the previous episodes, with a crisis that is either going to unite the new school or divide them forever. And then it ends with, I thought, a really clever reference and a funny reference, darkly funny, however you want to categorize it, to the crisis that is currently unfolding and has been for the last several months. Whether we're going to see any evidence of that in future versions of the show, who knows? Who knows if there's going to be a second season of the show? But I thought it was a good way to kind of give a wink to what's going on without having to address it directly. Looking at the show as a whole, it's going to be very interesting to me to see who reacts to it more, or who the viewer for the show is. I don't know if it's going to skew more towards people my age who want to revisit these characters and want to see this riff on the previous show. There are a lot of references, deep cut references to things that were on the original Saved by the Bell that, if you're not intimately familiar with the show, are going to go over your head. Most of them I don't think are critical to the plot, but I do think that the show is certainly enhanced if you know what they're referencing. On the other hand, this is aiming for a new generation. You do have a new generation of Bayside students. I don't think it skews as young as the original Saved by the Bell did. I don't necessarily know if this is going to be a favorite for kids that are in elementary school. Maybe as you get into the higher grades and into junior high and high school, this might hit it a little bit more. But it is going to be interesting to see what that response is, because it is a mixture of its own show and a riff on the show that I grew up with and that so many others grew up with. So if it gets a second season, it's going to be very interesting to see in what direction they take this show. Honestly, there were more than enough references to the original Saved by the Bell in this season. I wouldn't mind one bit if you focus on this new cast, still have the other characters in the background, but I like this cast, and they spend so much time getting past the premise and getting past all of the issues that come with the merging of these two schools. I'd love to see more of their characters and more of how they interact with each other. And they still do get into these wacky, zany adventures, although not quite as wacky and zany as they were back in the 80s and 90s. But I would love to see more of a focus on them and less of a focus on the past. Bottom line, I laughed several times throughout each episode of the show. Some episodes are stronger than others, but I do think if you're a fan of Saved by the Bell, I think you're going to like it. If you're looking for a new kind of fun teenage comedy, whether you are a teenager or you just enjoy watching fun teenage comedies, I think you're going to like it. If there is a second season of Saved by the Bell, I'm going to be looking forward to it. I think that there were a lot of ways that you could have gone wrong with this show. I think there were a lot of ways that you could have made this sort of a boring or bland repeat, trying to attempt the same formula of the original show. They avoided all of that. So generally, I would say well done on 2020 Saved by the Bell. One of the few times you've been able to reboot something like this and actually have it compare in any way favorably to the original. In this case, by comparing itself to the original, it finds its own strength and its own voice, and it's something that I would recommend. So that's my review of the new class of Saved by the Bell, but not Saved by the Bell, the new class. That is a completely different show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm uploading this review on Thanksgiving morning, so if you are celebrating the holiday here in North America and elsewhere, I hope you're doing so safely and happily. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more of what I'm doing, you can check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/Dan Murrell. And as a matter of fact, these are some of my producer level patrons who help make what I do possible. I want to thank each and every one of them. These are tough times to have so many people stick around and want to engage, and we have a great Discord server. We do watch-alongs and movie commentaries and Schmodown commentaries. There's so much that we do over there, and it's been so much fun to meet new people and to talk to them. We'd love to have you join the Patreon. Also, don't forget that I have a podcast called All My Movies. You can find the links to subscribe down below. I really have a great time doing that show. This week, I talked about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, one of the greatest and one of the only Thanksgiving movies ever made. So be sure to check me out there. Thank you so much for watching this review of Saved by the Bell, and I'll see you soon.